Welcome to In the Zone. I'm your host, Brad Wood. Starting with our Super Sports segment, Kevin Kiptum, the Kenyan marathon world record holder, has died in a car crash at the age of 24 on February 11th. The athlete was driving with his coach and another woman in western Kenya. The coach was also killed in the crash, and an unnamed woman was taken to the hospital with severe injuries. Kiptum's marathon world record of 3 hours and 35 seconds was set at the Chicago Marathon in October, with the world record just being ratified by the International Track Federation World Athletics last week. The Chicago Marathon was only the third marathon of his career, and he was favored to win the gold in the marathon at the 2024 Paris Olympics. Tributes to the athlete have been pouring across social media, with one of the first to offer condolences came from the World Athletics president Sebastian Coe saying, quote, "An incredible athlete leaving an incredible legacy. We will miss him dearly," end quote. For the first time in MLB history, a woman will be the primary play-by-play announcer. Jenny Kovnar, for the past 12 years, has been a pre- and post-game host and backup play-by-play announcer for the Colorado Rockies, as well as working in the NHL and college basketball. She was hired this year by Oakland Athletics as their new main announcer after Glenn Kopler, the announcer for their last 20 seasons, was fired last season for using a racial slur. Her promotion was announced yesterday morning and is unfortunately already being met with many inappropriate and sexist remarks. She and many other women who work in professional sports, like Lisa Byton and Kate Scotts, are paving the way for women's opportunities in professional sports. The United States has earned one of its last spots in the 2024 Summer Olympics for artistic swimming. This is the first time since 2008 the team has qualified, and this year it might include female and male athletes for the first time ever. The Olympics approved men to compete on artistic swimming teams after the international officials approved the decision just under a year ago. U.S. head coach Andrea Fuentes said, quote, "I want inclusion. If male athlete Bill Mays makes the Olympic team, making artistic swimming history." Now let's jump into the conversation with the Super Bowl on the horizon, NFL coaching shakeups, and the NBA getting hot. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. In the Zone starts now. I am now joined by Nate Reichley and Lucas Miro to discuss the results of the Super Bowl. While the San Francisco 49ers had yet another 10-point lead in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, they somehow blew it again. While the 49ers looked like the better team in the first half, the Chiefs kept themselves in striking distance until they sealed the deal in overtime, winning 25-22. So, Lucas, what went wrong with the 49ers, and could have they won the game at all?
I think the Niners had plenty of opportunities to win this game, and I think a lot of it went downhill when they had the special teams miscues. There were a lot of holding penalties on them. You know, you saw it at the start of the game, and then again towards the end that they had some tough calls go against them. I think at the end of the day, though, you got to give a lot of credit to Mahomes and the Chiefs. The play calling was great in overtime to get them down on that final drive, and the play by Andy Reid at the end was, phenomenal to make that call in overtime, clock winding down. I know it would have gone into another period, but it's still amazing that they quickly got that off and won the game on that play. But the Niners had a lot of opportunities in this game, and yet again they came up short.
It was just a little disappointing. But Nate, you being a Chiefs fan, what do you think about this victory?
I feel great. I called it. I said there's no one in the AFC that can stop the Chiefs, and them throughout the playoffs proved that. I literally just have 2 words here, just Chiefs Kingdom. That's all I need to say. Because regardless of if we're on the road, if we're at home, if we're in Las Vegas in a dome, Doesn't matter. You can sack Mahomes. You can make him fumble. You can do all this. He is one of the greatest talents just of the sport. I'm not going to say he's the greatest, but he's one of top 10 at least. Just because of his accomplishments and everything. As far as the game itself, I know there's a lot of controversy. I know there was a lot of injuries on the Niners during the game. There were a lot of controversial holds, lots of controversial calls that did or didn't happen. The Chiefs got robbed many times throughout the regular season, and I didn't say a single thing about it. So I'm not going to say anything about that either.
And, you can look at Brock Purdy in that third quarter. It was just rough. He was barely throwing the ball, and Patrick Mahomes just kind of wind down, and definitely in overtime. You just saw that's why he's probably arguably a top 5 player of all time in the league. So it's just, you can never doubt the Chiefs. You can never doubt Mahomes, but what do y'all think? Do you think they could go for 4 Super Bowls?
I think they could. I don't know that it's going to be like, back to back to back like that, but as long as Andy Reid, is still there and they have that staple identity that they've had as long as he's been there, and certainly as long as they've had Mahomes and Kelsey and a lot of the guys on defense that they have over the past couple years, I don't think anything's going to change with that. I mean, a lot of people are talking dynasty, and I think they've hit that, and I think they're just going to continue, making strides along that line that they've had the past couple of years.
Good to see. Nate, what do you think? Do you think they can keep going? 4, 5, 6?
They can definitely three-peat. After that, little iffy, just because I know a lot of cap hits start happening. Chris Jones today during the parade said that he's not going anywhere. He wants to be here next year and the year after that for the chance to go back-to-back and even back-to-back-to-back-to-back. So it's a possibility. Three-peat definitely seems more likely, if anything, to me. They just need wide receivers. If that defense stays together and the offensive line stays together, it's just the receiving room that needs help.
I mean, they're definitely the team to beat in the NFL. But now that Super Bowl is old news, all eyes will be on the offseason. What could come to the 2024 season? The Chiefs seem to have sealed themselves as the team to beat, as I said, for a long time to come, given their success in all aspects of the game, despite a weak wide receiver core. If you're thinking this sounds familiar, it does. Tom Brady literally won multiple Super Bowls with Walmart cashier and DoorDash drivers as wide receivers. So, Nate, you being a Chiefs fan, we'll start with you. Is there any teams that could compete the title in theory with Kansas City for a three-peat, or do you think they could keep going on? Because, let's look, you have the Ravens.
No, the Ravens aren't competing. We watched them. They had home field advantage. They were the number 1 seed. They had so much momentum going into it, and then they laid an egg.
Laid an egg?
They chickened themselves. They did not perform as well as an MVP, the number 1 offense, number 1 defense, should have performed against Mahomes and the Chiefs. Against that weak wide receiver group, you're going to let Marquez Valdez-Scantling have the game-winning, game-sealing catch on you.
Do you think it's more of a coaching problem than anything else with the Ravens?
At this point, it has to be. I know they went out and they just got an offensive coordinator. I know they just lost their defensive coordinator too. But I'm going to be honest, I don't know if Harbaugh is that guy anymore.
I don't know. But Lucas, what do you think? Do you think it could be any teams, both AFC and NFC, that could beat the Chiefs?
I think there's quite a bit of teams that can compete, and there's been a lot of teams that showed that this season. There's a lot of teams that are really young, and they're building a foundation, definitely. It looks like the Lions and the Texans showed that really in big numbers this year. They were teams that you didn't think could do much. I guess the Lions had a lot of expectations, but the Texans didn't. But anyway, my point being that Chiefs are kind of like we saw years ago where the Patriots were the number 1 team and then the Chiefs were kind of creeping up on them. It's now the Chiefs are that number 1 team, and I don't really know who that other team is that's going to creep up on them. It could be the Ravens. I doubt it with how, there's a lot of moving pieces that are going on in that team that they need to have figured out. It's kind of the same way with the Bengals, with T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, like you mentioned earlier. Don't really know what's going on with them. Burrow's health. You wonder about the Chargers with bringing Harbaugh in, but all of that AFC out of the door, I don't see on the NFC side anyone besides the Niners and maybe the Eagles. But both of them pretty much failed to do anything in the playoffs this year. Like the Niners got to the Super Bowl and then the moment was too big for them. So like, while I like to think that there's this handful, like this pod of teams that are going to be competing, it doesn't really look like it.
I want to stop you at the Eagles, though. They're basically the 2020 Steelers reincarnated. As a Steelers fan, I just saw frauds coming around. And some of the Eagles fans were even calling that out, so sorry.
I just want to say, though, you're saying the Niners, they couldn't handle the pressure. They couldn't handle the moment. They were handling the moment. They had Mahomes where they wanted him at halftime.
Right.
And then
that's at
Kyle
halftime.
Shanahan messed everything up.
I guess we'll see in the 2024 season who can beat the Chiefs. Heck, well, maybe I'll expect the Carolina Panthers to pull through, all right?
They're like plus 25,000 odds right now.
Bets on? Be a millionaire by next year. Anyway, on the college side of football, a lot of big moves have been made this offseason. One for the books, starting with the elephant in the room. Nick Saban is retired, making Alabama automatically less of a threat. Other moves include Jim Harbaugh going to the NFL, Chip Kelly heading to Ohio State, and Dylan Gabriel to Oregon. College football is going to look a lot different than what it was this past year. Lucas, are there any moves that stick out for you this offseason?
There were a ton of moves this offseason, especially in late December, early January. I mean, even up to last week that were just like, wow, like, you know, you can't believe what you're seeing. And Nick Saban retiring was definitely a big one. And Kalen DeBoer now takes over at Alabama. He brought some coordinators, an offensive line coach with him. They left already at Alabama to go to Seattle for the Seahawks job. So that, what you thought right away was like, can Alabama stay Alabama with Kalen DeBoer there? And I think my initial thought of it was that if he's bringing people over from Washington, like there's a chance that they can do that. But now that a lot of those pieces have now since left and a lot of kids are hitting the transfer portal, now that DeBoer is there, you really have to wonder if Alabama's going to stay Alabama as we know them or not. And I have to say, I don't think that they are. And another big move, Ohio State has hired Chip Kelly. So that was another one that was like, it wasn't on here on the script, but like that was one where I was like really surprised that, you know, that's something that's happening right now in college football. So those are two big ones for me.
I mean, Nick Saban leaving Alabama. I mean, he was definitely one of the best recruiters in the nation. And losing that piece, Alabama is known for the top classes, but do you think Alabama will be relevant or?
No. Nick Saban built a culture over all the years he was there. He built a very professional, very business, but also sports culture. Like, if you go there, you're expected to be top of the top. He got mad every time like his players would celebrate something disrespectful.
Well, when they're up like 60 too.
Exactly. And his mentality of it, I don't think you can have no one I know in the sports world at all has had anything close to that mentality. So I really don't think, unless some magic happens and everything just clicks into place, I don't think Alabama is going to be even a top 20 team this year.
Top 20, but who do you think will be like a top team next year coming along?
Definitely not Ohio State, I know that. I would love to see like some bottom teams. Like I'd love to see if USC could pull itself together, get rid of Caleb Williams and pull itself together. North Carolina has always kind of been a low-ranked team, but they've always had a very good program. I would love to see them rise in the rankings a bit. The big thing that I can tell right now is that college football is not going to be the same. The past 20 years, it's been dominated by LSU, Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, all these big teams, and it'll still remain dominated by a couple of those, but a couple of them are also going to fade off. And I can tell you that now.
We also got to talk about the conference realignment. I mean, look at the Big Ten right now, getting some different teams in there from the West Coast. Mm-hmm. You know, normally a Midwestern conference, you know, money talks. So that will be very impactful with the ratings and Big Ten championship. But now, let's send over to Christina Ricks for the latest in Marana sports. Christina?
Thanks, Brad. One Day Give is today. One Day Give is a day where you donate money to an athletic team or university department of your choice. Athletics have already raised over $500,000. Support your favorite Millersville University athletics team and help them reach the top One Day Give athletics leaderboard and benefit student athletes on the field, on the court, in the pool, and in the classroom with your generosity. Millersville Wrestling ends PSAC duel on a high note with Millersville scored 7 bonus points wins to run away with a 45-6 victory over Shippensburg. With the win, Wrestling improved to a 12-8 overall record for the most dual wins since the 1992-93 season. Men's basketball has won 4 in a row and 11 of its last 12 games. With 6 regular season games remaining, the Marauders sit in tie for second place in the PSAC East, just 1 game behind East Stroudsburg. Women's basketball at the roughest stretches of the 2023-2024 season, they have dropped 5 of their last 6 games. The Marauders have fallen from 3rd to 5th place in the PSAC East Division standings. The swim team's regular season has come to an end when the team finished with a dual record of 5-2. Wednesday through Saturday, the Millersville competes in a Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference Championship. 16 Marauders have qualified and will compete in individual and relay events throughout the 4 days of competition. That's all we have here for Ville Sports. Now we send it back to the desk for some NBA discussion. Brad?
Thanks, Christa. Fans of the NBA may have been disappointed with this year's trade deadline, especially for those teams that stayed pat. There's always next year's Lakers fans. There were no major moves like Zach LaVine or DeJounte Murray, but some of these years, come playoff basketball, could make the difference. The blazing hot New York Knicks made the deal at the deadline, acquiring veterans Alec Burks and Jovan Bončević of the Pistons. Nate, where do you think moves like this put the Knicks, and do you see them contending in the East?
Well, I'm going to say their record's 33-21. They don't have that many serious injuries. They only have day-to-day stuff. Their schedule is manageable. It's not a cakewalk, but it's not like the hardest schedule for the remainder of the season. If they keep on this pace, they'll be a solid playoff team, but I don't think they're a championship team with teams like the Celtics and the Bucks and maybe the Sixers. We'll see. But, I mean, who knows? I have doubted teams that have ended up going on amazing runs before, so maybe this is now the next time to wake up.
I mean, you look at the Heat, they ran an amazing run, beat the Celtics, and they were the favorites in the East. But
Exactly.
Lucas, what do you think about the Knicks?
I think they look pretty good. I think one of the staples of this team is definitely the play of Jalen Brunson, and he seems to be like their superstar right now, and I think he has been, since he's came there. I don't know how much productivity they really get from Julius Randle nowadays, but I think you have Brunson, and now you bring in guys like Bogdanovich and Alec Burks. It's going to definitely add to what is already kind of like a core of the New York Knicks. I think they could go on somewhat of a playoff run. I really never think of them as like a finals type of team. I don't think I will this year either. The only thing that I'll say about them in, relevance to like the Eastern playoffs is I don't really trust like the Sixers and the Bucks as much this year as usual. So if the Knicks can go on a little bit of a run, there might be some magic there, if those other teams that are usually dominating the East somewhat, take a tumble. But I think the Knicks will just probably be like a first round, second round exit.
All right. Well, Nate, I mean, Knicks could definitely do something, but what I'm looking at, just the East is too much, and heck, there's some good teams in the West. So it's very interesting to see. I mean, it was just, but overall, the trade deadline, very, very
Boring.
Yeah, boring. No big moves. Really thought the Lakers were going to do something, but guess not. But more on the NBA trade deadline. The Bucks traded for Sixers fan favorite Patrick Beverley, doing a future second-round pick, and Cameron Payne. The Sixers were involved in another deal on February 8th, trading for one of the league's premium shooters, Buddy Hyde. And Joel Embiid hopefully coming back to full slate for the playoffs. It should make for an interesting postseason. What do you think about this activity of the deadline means for Philly, Lucas?
I think the move of trading Patrick Beverley was pretty dumb. I don't know why you would get rid of a guy like Beverley. I mean, he's a great defensive presence. He doesn't do that much offensively that we've seen in his career, but he's really known for that like scrappy defender. And I think the Sixers usually are in need of a player like that. The trade for Buddy Hield is really big for them. I think he's a great shooter. He's somewhat of a veteran guy, but I think him pairing with Tyrese Maxey is going to be really big for them. I like that Maxey is kind of like in the spotlight right now while Embiid's out. I think Embiid, it's really going to depend on him, what they do in the playoffs. If he's healthy, which he never is at this time of the year and he never is in April, but if he can come back and be like, even 70%, it's still going to take a lot off of the shoulders of some of those younger guys like Maxey and, take a lot off of the shoulders of Buddy Hield and some of their other players. But I think going forward, they got to start to build around Maxey more than Embiid. So if this isn't the year where he gets it done, it's probably time to move on.
All right, Nate, what do you think about the Sixers?
He just perfectly said everything I wanted to talk about. Maxey is basically carrying this team to wins right now. He put up 51 in a game that they only won by 3 points by. Just putting that out there. Right now they're out. Harris is out, Embiid is out, Melton's out. They have a game against the Heat tonight that could be their 3rd straight win, but I honestly wouldn't be surprised if that's like their loss, and then they lose like 3 more, and then they get another 2 wins, and then they just kind of taper off. They're not going to be the same without Embiid. Even if he does come back in the playoffs, we've seen how he plays injured. He had that I think it was a playoff series either a year ago or 2 years ago where he had the mask.
Yeah. Yep.
That was just not the same Embiid. So, I don't know. I do agree they need to build around Maxey. He is generational. He is a skilled shooter, and I would love to see him win a championship.
I think he'll be a good piece, but it's all about Embiid as well, making it to the postseason and performing well. But honestly, we'll see. But in college basketball, the reigning champions, UConn, has dominated this season so far with a 22-2 overall record. Purdue is close behind, but just hasn't shown the same amount of pure dominance that UConn has. And one surprise from the season has been Kansas, who is supposed to be good because, they're Kansas. A lot of things could happen before March Madness begins, but right now, Nate, who do you think will go the distance next month?
You could obviously say Purdue or UConn, or you could do what I did, and I decided to bring out a sleeper pick of mine, St. Mary's, who has gone on an 8-game winning streak and has no ranked opponents for the rest of the season. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Or you can say, you know what, I was about to say, very underrated. I can think they go through. I don't like going for the top seeded teams too much, but I mean, UConn was seeded 4 last year. They won it all. My March Madness bracket was crap, but I got UConn winning it all. So, but Lucas, what do you think is going to win it all?
I like his pick with St. Mary's. I think they're unbeaten in the Western Conference right now. They beat Gonzaga. Gonzaga beat Kentucky. So it's kind of like weird that this whole season has been that way, where like one team beats another. It's just this whole domino effect. But one team that I'm actually pretty high on right now is Marquette out of the Big East. I think they've had some slip-ups this year. They looked pretty good at the beginning of the season against some of the, big-time opponents like Purdue, Kansas. But once we get into the late part of conference play and we get into conference tournaments, I think they're a team that if they win their conference, which is very possible because the Big East, they're strong like always, but they're somewhat weak right now at this point of the year for some reason. So if they win the Big East, not win out, but win their conference, I think they could be dangerous in the tournament. There's a couple other teams that look pretty good, but UConn and Purdue are like just stapled right there at the top. And it's like their record is so good, I don't know how good they're going to perform come bracket time.
That's true, though. I mean, UConn 22-2. Absolutely crazy. I mean,
yeah, but we've seen teams do amazing and then get wiped in the first round.
That's the thing, though. UConn,
Virginia.
To be fair, UConn does have the history of screwing up when it comes to March Madness. So who knows if they could go back to back. But
I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it for my dad. I would love North Carolina to go on a run like they did 2 years ago when they ended up in the final against Kansas, I think. Or was it Kansas or Duke?
I think
It was
Kansas, yeah.
Yeah. They only lost by 3. But that was the night that, my dad and I, we don't watch college basketball. That was the most invested we've been. And I would love to see that happen again because they are a solid team. They were the 3rd-ranked team in the nation until they lost, and they dropped 4 spots.
They just lost last night, too, to Syracuse.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. I mean, my dad's a big Villanova fan, but there's not really Yeah, there's not much to cheer about at all from him.
Womp womp.
I got Kentucky right now.
You know what? Kentucky's a no sleeper pick, but I think St. Mary's. I think they could definitely go on a run. But that would do it for this episode of In the Zone for Nate Reichley, Lucas Miller, Christa, Rex, and the entire In the Zone crew. I'm Brad Wood. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great week, and see you next week right here on In the Zone.